this thing is getting worse before it gets better. Okay? Because you have the West openly talking about nuclear war. You have Russia openly talking about nuclear weapons because they feel threatened. Now, a lot will say, well, Russia has no reason to be threatened. Really? Because last time I checked, NATO was literally encircling Russia, and that means the entire military arsenal, including nuclear weapons, had a so-called constitutional mandate under NATO. If you're a NATO country and you feel threatened, you say, I feel threatened by Russia, I'm right on Russia's doorstep, then you have the right to use nuclear weapons. So why shouldn't Russia be threatened by that, even that scenario alone? I mean, how many times have we seen the U.S. create pretexts for military interventions and wars? Well, why shouldn't Russia be fearful of one? It seems like the Ukraine proxy war, the special military operation, has created one opportunity after another for the United States to ramp up the situation to the point and escalate the situation to the point where the nuclear conversation is happening. And it should be frightening. You do have the Western media talking openly about this scenarios, right? Here you have the Telegraph, which is really a joke outlet. Really, it's barely anything. To me, it's still tabloid, even though I know it's not. But it's British press, and it essentially, to me, it's tabloid. But here you have what the U.S. means when it says catastrophic consequences. Should the Russians use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, right? You have the same should China invade Taiwan, right? You have all these conditions. This is what they do. They build up conditions to justify. This is pretext. None of this has happened. Russia's not saying that it's going to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine just because. That the rhetoric is clear from Medvedev, from the Russian government. It's not we're going to just bomb Ukraine with nuclear weapons. No, it's if we feel like NATO-backed and sponsored operations are now threatening our territorial integrity, then we reserve the right to use this option if we feel like there isn't any other. Because what happens when you have a foreign imperialist power invading you in that way, right? Well, what happens is that you have two options. You can certainly a full mobilization and try to defend the country from within, but that's going to cost a lot of people, a lot of lives. The nuclear deterrence seems to be the option if you're going to spare as many people as possible. Ironically enough, as dystopian as that sounds, that's the military strategy. And but here you have none of this actually occurring, but you have basically the Telegraph talking about it. What are the options for retaliation? So they're already thinking about what situation would cause a retaliation. They want the retaliation. This isn't, oh, Russia's going to do it, so we have to know. No, there's no evidence of that. Russia has not used nuclear weapons. It's never threatened it. No. Back during the beginning of the operation back in April, it was not threatening nuclear weapons. It said it was turning its nuclear deterrence on red alert, meaning that they would use nuclear weapons if they were provoked, if they were invaded, if they felt like there was an act of war being committed upon them. Not we're going to use it in the special military operation. That was never on the table. So here you have them, though, talking about it like this. What form might the catastrophic consequences, in the words of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, take should Russia use nuclear weapons in Ukraine? Bob Seeley. So you have possible responses from the West could range from the military, including nuclear strikes, to those targeting Russia's economy. So you see this, including nuclear strikes. So that's on the table. Not, oh, well, we're better, right? It would be so interesting if you heard Western media say, right, I don't know, we're better than those Russians. We're more civilized, quote unquote. We won't stoop to their level. You never hear that, though, right? No, it's always no. We're going to use greater force. We're going to escalate the situation. We're going to make sure that thousands of miles away, we're doing our due diligence to, quote unquote, defend democracy and defend our national security interests. You never hear, oh, well, we're better than them. We're not going to stoop to their level. We're going to use all the means at our disposal, diplomacy, everything, to ensure that nothing like this can happen? No, absolutely not. That's not how imperialism works. So British MP Bob Seeley, an expert on Russian nuclear strategy, says the West's reaction would need to be finely judged, as there's a difference between perception, which is important to understand. First, in Russia, tactical nuclear weapons use is serious, but arguably does not come with the same censure as in the West. Second, in recent Russian nuclear doctrine, tactical nuclear weapons were seen to be a deterrent to Western dominance in the very high-tech precision non-nuclear weapons, so they were part of a usable arsenal. Third, tactical nuclear weapons could be seen as weapons to calm a crisis, the so-called escalate to de-escalate theory, where you trigger a nuclear weapon as a warning. So, I mean, that's all scenario. Again, they're going over more and more scenarios as like, well, Russia doesn't think nuclear weapons are that bad, right? That's basically what they're saying. They're not that bad. We can use them if we want. So, in the event of their use, though, a proportionate military response would be to target an airbase or intelligence hub in Crimea, said William Alberkey, director of strategy, technology, and arms control at, there you go, the International Institute of Strategic Studies, another imperialist think tank. Equally, a couple of strikes in Russia plus a larger number in the Russian-held areas of Ukraine would be appropriate, he told the Daily Telegraph. Of course, the U.S. wouldn't want to go it alone. Oh, no. You got to sink Europe too, right? So you got to get UK and France, as they did in strikes against Libya in 2011. So they're literally saying, yes, we need to wage war on Russia should this happen, right? So what does this sound like? This sounds like its own kind of warning. So Russia has been warning the West, saying, yes, we will use nuclear weapons if we feel threatened, and that Ukraine, there are red lines here, right? Our territory is a red line in these referendums. This is why this is so important. This was written on the 26th, and the referendums were underway. This is why this is very important, because now the referendums are expanding Russia's border. That's what they're going to do, into the east of Ukraine. So now there is all of this opportunity, as the imperialists like to view it. It's not, oh, well, this is a huge problem for us. Maybe it's a huge setback militarily. Maybe we should scale back. No, this is an opportunity for the warmongers, the militarists, the trillions that have gone into this nuclear arsenal to maybe, maybe be experimented with. Maybe there is, right? Maybe there is a scenario, and this should be scary. There is a scenario where, oh, well, could we interpret, right, an attack on could it be interpreted by Russia that an attack by Ukraine, the Ukrainian armed forces, into the Donbass, now admitted into the Russian Federation, could that spark a potential nuclear conflict? It could, it might, because now you're talking about Russia's borders. And they're drooling over this. They're literally comparing it to Libya and saying, well, we're going to try to get Europe involved, and even if we facilitate the strike, we kind of want them to be a big part of it. So the target set for a Western response would most likely be radars or intelligence or surveillance systems connected to any nuclear strike. Equally vulnerable would be Russia's early warning or command and control nodes, such as headquarters. So again, they're going over war. These targets would likely be in Russia itself rather than Belarus or Russian-held areas of Ukraine. They would shy away from attacking Russian satellites, as targeting space-based assets has been discussed among as permanent 5 members of UN Security Council deemed off limits. I feel so much better now. I feel so much better that the space imperialism of the United States, it's off limits. It's off limits. I feel good. So again, they keep going on and on and on. So retired General Rupert Jones says there are lots of different conventional responses the West could make if Putin were to order the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine, precision strike of the Russian Navy, targeted campaign against Moscow's Air Force would be conventional responses, a direct attack by NATO. Whatever action will be taken, the aim must be to make sure there's uncertainty about future responses. So that's the deal. I mean, basically that nuclear weapons are on the table, and it's like a bunch of conditions being sown, imperialism lusting over this, wanting it, seeing referendums, seeing the expansion of Donbass or of Russia into the Donbass region, right? The fact that now Ukraine is going to have some issues because Russia could easily see attacks on Kherson, on Donetsk, on Lugansk from here on out as direct attacks on Russia. And now they're lusting. And so here you have the Russian nuclear arsenal. They have about 5,000 plus, right? And so, I mean, this is a big, big problem. I'm not going to read this whole article. I just wanted to show you that this is what they're thinking. They are thinking about the nuclear option. They are. That's just the reality. And Russia is saying, this is what they're saying. Russia is saying that we've been put in a position where we have to think about this very seriously. Very, very seriously.